You know that feeling when your mouth moves faster than your brain? When words just tumble out before you can catch them, and suddenly your whole life changes? Well, that's exactly what happened to Kai Rivers on a Tuesday afternoon that started like any other boring day at Sterling Corporation. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Kai stared at his computer screen, his eyes burning from exhaustion. He had been working for 12 hours straight, fixing a presentation that his department needed for tomorrow's big meeting. His fingers moved automatically across the keyboard, typing numbers and charts that all blurred together into one giant mess of information. Sterling Corporation was one of those fancy companies where everything had to be perfect. The carpets were always clean, the windows always sparkled, and everyone wore expensive suits that probably cost more than Kai's entire month's rent. Kai worked in the finance department on the 7th floor, stuck in a tiny cubicle between his best friend Leo Martinez and a nice guy named Oliver Chen. Leo was the kind of person everyone liked immediately. He had perfectly styled black hair, a bright smile that could charm anyone, and he always knew exactly what to say to make people laugh. He had been Kai's friend since Kai's first day at the company 6 months ago, showing him where the coffee machine was and warning him about all the office politics. Oliver was quieter, with kind eyes behind his glasses and a gentle way of speaking that made people feel comfortable. He brought homemade cookies to share every Friday and always remembered everyone's birthdays. Kai appreciated Oliver's calm presence, especially on stressful days like today. But the person everyone really talked about was the boss. Asher Sterling, the 28-year-old CEO who had inherited the company when his parents died in a car accident 5 years ago. Nobody really knew much about him except that he was cold, serious, and absolutely terrifying. He walked through the office like a winter storm, his silver hair perfectly styled, his gray eyes seeing everything but showing nothing. People whispered that he had never smiled, not even once, since taking over the company. Kai had only spoken to Mr. Sterling a handful of times, usually just brief, "Yes, sir," and "Right away, sir" conversations that left Kai's hands shaking. There was something about the way Mr. Sterling looked at people like he could see right through them and find every mistake they had ever made. Tonight, the office was almost empty. Most people had gone home hours ago, but Kai needed to finish this presentation. His eyes were so heavy that he kept nodding off, his head drooping forward before he jerked awake again. That's when he heard the footsteps. The distinctive click of expensive dress shoes on the polished floor, echoing through the quiet office. Kai didn't need to look up to know who it was. Only one person walked with that kind of confident, measured pace. Rivers. The voice was cold and smooth, like ice water. "My office, now." Kai's heart jumped into his throat. He scrambled to his feet, nearly knocking over his cold coffee cup in the process. Mr. Sterling was already walking away, his long coat flowing behind him like something from a movie. Kai rushed to follow, his tired brain trying to figure out what he had done wrong. Had he made a mistake in the reports? Had someone complained about his work? Was he about to get fired? Mr. Sterling's office was on the top floor, a massive space with floor-to-ceiling windows that showed the entire city spread out below like a blanket of lights. The desk was made of dark wood that probably cost more than a car, and everything was arranged with perfect precision. Not a single paper out of place, not a speck of dust anywhere. Mr. Sterling sat down behind his desk and gestured to the coffee machine in the corner. "Make me a coffee, black, no sugar. And make it properly this time, not like that disaster you brought me last week." Kai's face flushed red. He remembered last week when he had accidentally put salt instead of sugar in Mr. Sterling's coffee. It had been an honest mistake because someone had switched the containers as a prank, but Mr. Sterling had taken one sip, made a face like he had tasted poison, and told Kai to never touch his coffee again. Until now, apparently. Kai's hands shook as he operated the expensive coffee machine, praying he wouldn't mess this up. The machine hummed and hissed, filling the quiet office with the rich smell of fresh coffee. When it was done, Kai carefully carried the cup to Mr. Sterling's desk, holding it with both hands like it was made of glass. Mr. Sterling took the cup without looking at Kai, his eyes fixed on his computer screen. "Next time, don't make me wait." And that's when it happened. That's when Kai's exhausted, sleep-deprived brain decided to betray him completely. Kai heard himself say, in a cheerful, joking voice, "Yes, Daddy." The words hung in the air like a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. Kai's entire body went cold. His brain finally caught up with his mouth, and he realized what he had just said. To his boss. To the coldest, most terrifying person in the entire company. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Kai had ever heard. He could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears, could hear the quiet hum of the computer, could hear the city traffic far below. But Mr. Sterling said nothing. He just stopped moving completely, his hand frozen halfway to his keyboard. Slowly, very slowly, Mr. Sterling turned his head to look at Kai. Those gray eyes, usually so cold and distant, were now focused entirely on him with an intensity that made Kai want to melt into the floor. Kai's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I didn't, I'm so sorry, Mr. Sterling, I don't know why I said that. I've been watching these stupid videos online where people joke around and say that, and I'm just so tired and my brain isn't working right, and I absolutely did not mean anything by it. And I completely understand if you want to fire me right now because that was so inappropriate and Stop talking. Mr. Sterling's voice cut through Kai's rambling like a knife. Kai's mouth snapped shut. This was it. He was definitely getting fired. Maybe even escorted out by security. He would never get another job in this industry once word got out that he had called his boss Daddy, like some kind of weirdo. But then Mr. Sterling did something Kai never expected. He leaned back in his chair, those piercing gray eyes still locked on Kai's face, and said in a low, quiet voice that somehow seemed more dangerous than any shouting could be, "Call me Daddy again, and I'll make sure you mean it." Kai felt like someone had dumped a bucket of ice water over his head. Wait. What? What did that even mean? Was that a threat? Was Mr. Sterling saying he would make Kai's life miserable? Or was it something else entirely? Kai didn't wait to find out. He turned and practically ran out of the office, his face burning so hot he probably looked like a tomato. Behind him, he thought he heard a sound that might have been a laugh, but that was impossible. Mr. Sterling didn't laugh. Everyone knew that. The next morning, Kai seriously considered quitting. He lay in bed staring at his ceiling, replaying the horrifying moment over and over in his head. Maybe he could just never go back. Maybe he could move to another city, change his name, start a completely new life where nobody knew about his terrible, awful mistake. But Kai needed this job. His apartment wasn't going to pay for itself, and jobs at companies like Sterling Corporation didn't grow on trees. So he dragged himself out of bed, put on his best suit, and prepared to face whatever punishment waited for him. When he arrived at the office, Leo immediately cornered him at the coffee machine. "Dude, where were you last night? I texted you like 5 times. Kai had ignored all his messages, too embarrassed to talk to anyone. "Sorry, I was just really tired. I went straight home and crashed." Leo studied his face with concern. "Are you okay? You look kind of sick." "I'm fine," Kai lied, pouring coffee he didn't even want. "Just didn't sleep well." Oliver walked up, carrying a container of his homemade cookies. "Morning, Kai, you look stressed. Want a cookie? They're chocolate chip." Kai took one gratefully. Oliver's cookies always made everything a little better. "Thanks, Oliver, you're the best." Oliver smiled, a slight blush coloring his cheeks. "It's nothing. I just like baking for friends." The morning passed slowly, with Kai jumping every time he heard footsteps, convinced Mr. Sterling was coming to fire him in front of everyone. But Mr. Sterling didn't appear. In fact, the entire morning went by without any sign of him at all. By lunchtime, Kai started to relax a little. Maybe Mr. Sterling had decided to just ignore the whole embarrassing incident. Maybe he would never mention it again, and they could both pretend it never happened. That hope died at exactly 2:15 in the afternoon when Kai's desk phone rang. The caller ID showed Sterling Office. Kai's hand shook as he picked up the phone. "Hello? Conference room 3. 5 minutes. Click." Mr. Sterling had hung up. Kai felt like he might throw up. Leo looked over from his cubicle with curiosity. Was that the boss? What does he want? "Meeting," Kai managed to say, his voice sounding strange and distant to his own ears. Conference Room 3. He walked to the conference room like a prisoner walking to his execution. His legs felt heavy, and his heart was pounding so hard he thought everyone must be able to hear it. This was it. This was definitely where he got fired. Conference Room 3 was one of the smaller meeting rooms, with a long table and chairs and a whiteboard on one wall. When Kai walked in, Mr. Sterling was already there, standing by the window with his back to the door. He was still wearing that perfectly tailored suit that probably cost more than Kai's entire wardrobe combined. "Close the door," Mr. Sterling said without turning around. Kai closed the door with trembling hands. The click of the lock sounded incredibly loud in the quiet room. Mr. Sterling finally turned around, and Kai noticed something different about him. He looked tired. There were slight shadows under his eyes, and his usually perfect hair had one strand slightly out of place. It was barely noticeable, but for someone as perfectly put together as Mr. Sterling, it was shocking. "About last night," Mr. Sterling began, and Kai wanted to sink through the floor. "I owe you an apology." Wait. What? Kai's brain couldn't process what he was hearing. Mr. Sterling apologizing? To him? Mr. Sterling continued, his voice still cold but with something else underneath it, something Kai couldn't quite identify. "My response was inappropriate. You made a joke, clearly influenced by internet culture and exhaustion, and I should have simply accepted your apology and moved on. Instead, I said something that could be considered threatening or uncomfortable." Kai stared at him, mouth slightly open. This was the weirdest conversation he had ever had. "However," Mr. Sterling added, and now there was something different in his eyes, something almost like amusement, "I meant what I said. What?" Kai's brain had officially stopped working. Mr. Sterling took a step closer. "You're interesting, Rivers. In the 6 months you've worked here, I've noticed things about you. You work harder than most people in your department. You stay late without complaining. You make mistakes sometimes, like that salt coffee incident, but you learn from them. You're also the only person in this building who isn't terrified of me." "I am definitely terrified of you," Kai blurted out before he could stop himself. The corner of Mr. Sterling's mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was the closest thing Kai had ever seen on his face. "And yet you joked with me last night. Nobody else would dare." Kai didn't know what to say to that. His brain was still stuck on the part where Mr. Sterling had apparently been noticing him for 6 months. Mr. Sterling turned back to the window, looking out at the city below. "I'm not good at this. Talking to people, I mean. When my parents died, and I had to take over this company, I was 23 years old and had no idea what I was doing. Everyone expected me to fail. The board of directors, our competitors, even some of our own employees. So I became this." He gestured at himself. "Cold, distant, untouchable. It was easier than letting people see that I was scared and confused." Kai felt something shift inside him. Suddenly, Mr. Sterling wasn't this terrifying Ice King anymore. He was just a person who had been hurt and alone and trying his best to survive. "I don't think you're doing a bad job," Kai said softly. "The company is more successful than ever. Everyone says so." Mr. Sterling looked at him with those intense gray eyes. "Success isn't the same as happiness, Rivers. I've learned that the hard way." They stood in silence for a moment, and Kai realized this was probably the most honest conversation Mr. Sterling had had with anyone in years. "So what happens now?" Kai finally asked. Mr. Sterling's expression became unreadable again. "Now, you go back to work, and I'll try not to make any more inappropriate comments that confuse my employees." Kai nodded, turning toward the door. But before he could leave, Mr. Sterling spoke again. "Rivers?" "Yes, Mr. Sterling? Call me Asher, when we're alone at least." Kai's heart did a strange little flip in his chest. "Okay." The name felt strange on his tongue, intimate and dangerous all at once. He saw something flash in Asher's eyes, something warm and hungry that made Kai's breath catch. Then the moment passed, and Asher turned back to the window. Dismissed. Over the next few weeks, something strange started happening. Asher began appearing near Kai's desk more often, always with some work-related excuse. He would ask Kai to review reports, to double-check numbers, to attend meetings that Kai normally wouldn't be important enough for. Each time they would talk a little more, and Kai started to see behind Asher's cold mask. He learned that Asher liked jazz music but only listened to it when he was alone. That he had a cat named Shadow who was the only living thing he felt comfortable showing affection to. That he sometimes worked all night because he had nightmares about his parents' accident and was afraid to sleep. Kai also started staying late more often, not because he had to, but because he knew Asher would be there. They would work in comfortable silence, and sometimes Asher would bring them both coffee and they would talk about nothing important. Books they had read, movies they had seen, places they wanted to visit someday. Leo noticed the change and started making comments. "The boss sure is paying a lot of attention to you lately. You're not getting any special treatment, are you?" "Of course not," Kai said, but he felt guilty. Because it kind of was special treatment, wasn't it? Asher didn't stay late and talk with anyone else. He didn't bring anyone else coffee. He didn't look at anyone else the way he looked at Kai. Oliver noticed too, but he seemed more worried than jealous. "Just be careful, Kai. Office relationships can be complicated, especially with someone in power. I don't want to see you get hurt. We're just friends," Kai insisted, even though his heart raced every time Asher smiled at him. Every time their hands accidentally brushed when passing papers. Every time those gray eyes focused on him with an intensity that made him feel like the only person in the world. One night, about 2 months after the daddy incident, Kai was working late again when Asher appeared at his desk. It was past midnight, and the office was completely empty except for them. "Come with me," Asher said quietly. "I want to show you something." He led Kai up to the roof of the building, a place employees weren't normally allowed to go. The city stretched out below them in every direction, millions of lights twinkling like stars brought down to earth. The wind was cool and fresh after the recycled air of the office. Asher stood at the edge of the roof, looking out over his kingdom of glass and steel. "Sometimes I come up here when everything gets too heavy. It helps to remember that we're all just tiny pieces of something much bigger." Kai stood beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "Do you feel lonely up here, at the top, I mean?" Asher turned to look at him, and in the moonlight, his face looked younger, more vulnerable. "I did, until recently." Kai's heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst out of his chest. "What changed? You did." Asher's voice was barely above a whisper. "You walked into my office exhausted and brave enough to joke with me, and suddenly everything felt less heavy." Kai couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at Asher's face, at the way the moonlight caught in his silver hair, at the way those usually cold eyes were now warm and full of something that looked like hope. "I know this is complicated," Asher continued. "I'm your boss. There are power dynamics and rules, and 1,000 reasons why this is a terrible idea. But I can't stop thinking about you, Kai. I can't stop wanting to be near you, to hear you laugh, to see you smile. You've woken up something in me that I thought died with my parents." Kai found his voice, though it came out shaky and unsure. "I think about you too, all the time, even when I'm trying not to." Asher reached out slowly, giving Kai plenty of time to pull away. His hand was warm when it cupped Kai's cheek, his thumb gently brushing across Kai's skin. "Tell me to stop. Tell me this is wrong, and I'll walk away. I'll go back to being your cold, distant boss, and we'll pretend this never happened." But Kai didn't want to stop. He didn't want to go back to pretending. He had spent 2 months falling for this complicated, damaged, wonderful person, and he was tired of fighting it. "Don't stop," Kai whispered. "Please don't stop." Asher's eyes closed like Kai had just given him the greatest gift in the world. Then he leaned in, slowly, carefully, until their lips met in a kiss that felt like coming home. It was gentle at first, almost hesitant, like Asher was afraid Kai might disappear if he pushed too hard. But when Kai kissed him back, wrapping his arms around Asher's neck, the kiss deepened into something urgent and desperate, years of loneliness and pain melting away under the moonlight. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Asher rested his forehead against Kai's. "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be in a relationship or how to be the person someone deserves, but I want to try. With you." Kai smiled, feeling happier than he had in years. "Then we'll figure it out together." They stayed on the roof for hours that night, talking and kissing and making plans for a future that suddenly seemed bright and full of possibility. Kai thought about Leo's warnings and Oliver's concern, but pushed them aside. Nothing could go wrong, he told himself. Not when everything felt so perfectly right. He had no idea that his best friend was already planning his betrayal, or that the happiness he felt that night would soon shatter into a million pieces. But for now, under the stars and city lights, with Asher's arms around him and hope blooming in his chest, Kai Rivers believed in happy endings. He should have known better. In a world where people wear masks and hide their true intentions, trust can be the most dangerous thing of all. The secret relationship between Kai and Asher bloomed like a flower in unexpected soil over the next 3 months. They were careful, so incredibly careful, to keep their feelings hidden at work. No lingering glances across the office, no touches that lasted too long, no special treatment that might make people suspicious. At work, Asher remained the cold, distant CEO, and Kai was just another employee working hard to meet his expectations. But outside the office, everything changed. Asher took Kai to quiet restaurants where nobody from the company would see them, little hidden places with dim lighting and tables tucked away in corners. They would sit across from each other, talking for hours about everything and nothing. Asher told Kai about his childhood before the accident, about his mother who loved to paint, and his father who would read him stories every night. Kai shared his own history, about growing up with not much money but lots of love, about his dreams of making something of himself in the big city. Asher was different when they were alone together. The ice melted away, revealing someone warm and funny and surprisingly gentle. He would hold Kai's hand under the table, his thumb tracing circles on Kai's palm. He would smile, real, genuine smiles that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He would laugh at Kai's terrible jokes, the sound rich and wonderful because it was so rare. They couldn't go to Asher's penthouse apartment very often because his building had doormen and security who might gossip. Instead, they usually went to Kai's small one-bedroom place across town. Asher never complained about the size or the worn furniture or the fact that sometimes the heater didn't work properly. He would sit on Kai's old couch like it was a throne, pulling Kai close and kissing him until the world outside disappeared. "I never thought I could be this happy," Asher whispered one night, his face buried in Kai's hair. "I never thought anyone would want to know the real me, the broken parts I keep hidden." "You're not broken," Kai said firmly, pulling back to look into Asher's eyes. "You're strong and brave, and you've survived things that would have destroyed other people. Those aren't broken parts, they're proof that you're a fighter." Asher kissed him again, soft and sweet, like Kai was something precious that might break if handled too roughly. In moments like these, Kai felt like the luckiest person alive, but he should have been paying more attention to what was happening at work. He should have noticed the way Leo's smiles became tighter, more forced. The way his best friend's jokes had sharp edges now, cutting instead of funny. The way Leo started asking questions that seemed innocent but weren't. "So, Kai, you've been staying late a lot recently," Leo mentioned casually one day at lunch, stabbing his salad with more force than necessary. "Working on something special for the boss?" "Just trying to do a good job," Kai said, not meeting his eyes. He hated lying to Leo, but he and Asher had agreed to keep their relationship completely secret. Too many things could go wrong if people found out. Leo's expression darkened. "You know, people are starting to talk, saying you're getting special treatment, that maybe you're doing more than just work to get ahead." Kai's face flushed with anger. "That's not true, and you know it. I work just as hard as everyone else. Do I know that?" Leo's voice was cold in a way Kai had never heard before. "I used to think I knew you, Kai. We were best friends, but lately, you're always busy, always tired, always making excuses not to hang out. It's like you're living some secret life I'm not part of anymore." Guilt twisted in Kai's stomach. Leo was right about that part, at least. Their friendship had suffered because Kai was spending all his free time with Asher. "I'm sorry, Leo. Things have just been really hectic, but you're still my best friend. That hasn't changed." Leo stared at him for a long moment, something unreadable flickering across his face. Then he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Of course, best friends, I'll remember that." Looking back later, Kai would realize that was the moment when everything started to fall apart. That was when Leo made his decision, when jealousy and hurt twisted into something darker. But Kai didn't see it. He was too caught up in his own happiness, too blinded by love to notice the dangers circling closer. Oliver noticed, though. Sweet, kind Oliver who paid attention to the details that everyone else missed. One day he pulled Kai aside after a meeting, his expression worried behind his glasses. "Kai, can I talk to you about something, in private?" They went to the break room, which was empty at this hour. Oliver looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with his coffee cup and not meeting Kai's eyes. "What's wrong?" Kai asked, concerned. Oliver wasn't usually this nervous. Oliver took a deep breath. "I'm going to say something, and I need you to know I'm saying it because I care about you as a friend. Not because I'm trying to start drama or spread gossip." "Okay," Kai said slowly, his stomach starting to twist with worry. "I know about you and Mr. Sterling." Kai's blood turned to ice. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. How? They had been so careful. Oliver quickly raised his hands in a peaceful gesture. "Don't panic. I haven't told anyone, and I'm not going to. I only figured it out because I pay attention to you more than I probably should." His cheeks turned pink. "I've noticed the way you two look at each other when you think nobody's watching. The way you both leave at the same time some nights. The way Mr. Sterling smiles now, just a little, which he never did before you came here." Kai sat down heavily in one of the break room chairs. "Oliver, you can't tell anyone. If people find out, they'll say I'm sleeping my way to the top or that Asher is abusing his power. And neither of those things are true. We care about each other." "I know," Oliver said gently. "I can see that it's real, and I'm not judging you, Kai, I promise. I just wanted to warn you to be more careful, because if I noticed, other people might notice too." Relief flooded through Chi. "Thank you, Oliver. Really, you're a good friend." Oliver smiled sadly. "I try to be... just watch out for yourself, okay? Workplace relationships are complicated even when they're between equals. When there's a power imbalance involved, things can get messy really fast." Kai promised to be more careful, and he and Asher tried even harder to keep their secret. They stopped leaving at the same time. They made sure to talk to other people at work so it wouldn't seem like they were focusing only on each other. They went back to being perfectly professional in the office. But it was too late, because Leo had already noticed too, and unlike Oliver, he didn't have good intentions. Leo had his own secrets. He was drowning in gambling debts that he had hidden from everyone. He had made stupid choices, betting money he didn't have on games he couldn't win, and now dangerous people were demanding payment. He needed money, lots of it, and fast. That's when the rival company approached him. Sterling Corporation had a competitor called Nexus Industries, run by a ruthless businessman named Marcus Blackwell, who had been trying to destroy Asher's company for years. Marcus had people everywhere, always looking for information, always searching for weaknesses to exploit. One of Marcus's people contacted Leo in a bar one night, sliding into the booth across from him with a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. "Leo Martinez, I hear you have money problems." Leo's heart raced. "Who are you?" "A friend who can help. I work for Marcus Blackwell. We're willing to pay very generously for information about Sterling Corporation. Specifically, we want access to financial records, client lists, upcoming projects. The kind of information that could give us a competitive edge." Leo should have said no, should have walked away. But he thought about the people he owed money to, about the threats they had made, and he felt trapped. "How much money are we talking about?" "Enough to solve all your problems, plus more as a bonus. All you have to do is get us the files." Leo's mind raced. He didn't have access to high-level company secrets, but he knew someone who did. Kai was always on Asher's computer, always handling sensitive documents because Asher trusted him completely. And that's when the terrible plan formed in Leo's mind. He knew Kai's computer password because they were friends, and Kai had shared it once when asking Leo to send an email for him. He knew Kai sometimes forgot to log out when he left for the day. It would be easy to use Kai's account to access the confidential files. Easy to make it look like Kai was the one stealing company secrets. He would get his money, the people threatening him would leave him alone, and Kai would take the fall. Their friendship had already been damaged anyway, Leo told himself. This was just necessary. Survival. The fact that it would also destroy Kai's relationship with Asher was just a bonus. Leo told himself he wasn't jealous, that this wasn't about wanting to hurt Kai for being happy. But deep down, in the parts of himself he refused to examine, Leo knew the truth. He wanted Kai to suffer the way he was suffering. He wanted Kai to lose everything the way Leo felt like he was losing everything. So he agreed to the deal. Over the next 2 weeks, Leo carefully executed his plan. He waited until Kai left for the day without logging out, which happened at least twice a week because Kai was always in such a hurry to meet Asher. Then Leo would slip into Kai's cubicle, open his computer using the saved password, and transfer confidential files to a hidden email account. He made sure to leave traces that would point back to Kai. He used Kai's login credentials, sent emails from Kai's account, even planted evidence in Kai's desk drawers. He was thorough and careful, covering every track that might lead back to himself. Kai had no idea what was happening. He was too happy, too in love, too trusting to imagine that his best friend would betray him so completely. The night everything fell apart started like any other. Kai was at his desk finishing up some reports when Asher texted him. "My place tonight? I'll cook dinner." Kai smiled at his phone. Asher had been taking cooking lessons secretly, trying to learn how to make more than just toast and coffee. His attempts were often disasters, but they were adorable disasters, and Kai loved him for trying. "Sounds perfect, I'll be there in an hour." He packed up his things, logged out of his computer properly this time, and headed for the elevator. He didn't notice Leo watching him from across the office, a strange expression on his face that mixed guilt with determination. Kai and Asher's evening was wonderful. Asher had actually managed to make a decent pasta dish without burning anything, and they ate dinner on his balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Afterward, they curled up on his expensive couch, Asher's cat Shadow purring contentedly between them, and watched a movie neither of them really paid attention to because they were too busy kissing. "I love you," Asher whispered against Kai's lips. It was the first time he had said those words, and they hung in the air like something precious and fragile. Kai's heart felt like it might burst. "I love you too." They stayed up late, talking about the future. Maybe, Asher suggested, after another few months, they could go public with their relationship. Maybe the company would accept it. Maybe they could stop hiding and just be happy together without all the secrecy. Kai fell asleep in Asher's arms that night, perfectly happy and completely unaware that his world was about to shatter. The next morning, Kai arrived at work to find the office in chaos. People were gathered in small groups, whispering urgently. Security guards were standing by the elevators, looking grim and official. Someone from the IT department was at Kai's desk, examining his computer with serious concentration. Leo rushed over, his face a perfect mask of shock and concern. If Kai hadn't been so panicked himself, he might have noticed the acting was too perfect, too rehearsed. "Kai, there you are. Something terrible has happened. What's going on?" Kai's voice came out high and scared. "Someone stole confidential files from the company database last night. Financial records, client information, trade secrets. They've been leaked to Nexus Industries. Mr. Sterling is furious." Kai's stomach dropped. "That's terrible. Do they know who did it?" Leo's eyes flickered with something that might have been guilt or satisfaction. "That's the thing, Kai. The files were accessed from your computer, using your login credentials." The world tilted sideways. "What? No, that's impossible. I logged out properly last night. I always log out." But even as he said it, doubt crept in. Did he log out? He had been in such a hurry to meet Asher. Had he been careless? The IT specialist looked up from Kai's computer. "The logs show access from this terminal at 11:45 p.m. last night. Multiple confidential files were copied and sent to an external email address. But I wasn't here at 11:45. I was..." Kai stopped, realizing he couldn't say where he really was. He couldn't tell everyone he had been at Asher's apartment. "I was at home. I left the office around 6. Can anyone confirm that?" The head of security had appeared, a large man with suspicious eyes who clearly didn't believe Kai's story. Kai's mind raced desperately. Asher could confirm it, but that would mean revealing their relationship. And even if they did reveal it, People would just assume Asher was lying to protect his boyfriend. It would make everything worse. I was alone, but I didn't do this. I would never steal from the company. The security chief's expression made it clear he had heard that denial 1,000 times before from guilty people. Mr. Sterling wants to see you in his office, now. Kai felt like he was walking to his execution as he made his way to the top floor. His hands were shaking, his breath coming in short gasps. This couldn't be happening. It was a mistake, a horrible mistake that they would clear up. Asher would believe him. Asher loved him. Asher knew Kai would never betray him like this. But when Kai walked into Asher's office, the man standing behind the desk wasn't the Asher he knew. This was the cold CEO again, all warmth and kindness frozen solid. Those gray eyes that had looked at Kai with love last night were now hard as steel. "Close the door," Asher said, his voice devoid of emotion. Kai closed it with trembling hands. "Asher, I didn't, Mr. Sterling. In the office, you will address me properly." The formality hurt worse than a slap. "Mr. Sterling, I didn't steal those files. I don't know how they were accessed from my computer, but it wasn't me. You have to believe me." Asher stood perfectly still, his face a mask that revealed nothing. "The evidence is very clear, Rivers. Your login credentials, your computer, your account. The files were transferred at a time when you claim you were alone at home with no witnesses. You had access to all of these confidential files because I trusted you." His voice cracked slightly on that last word, but then hardened again. "I gave you opportunities that other junior employees don't get. I let you into meetings, showed you sensitive information, relied on your work. Was that your plan all along? Get close to me, to steal from me?" "No," Kai's voice broke. "I would never do that. You know me, Asher. You know I'm not capable of something like this. Do I?" Asher's eyes were cold, so terribly cold. "How well do we really know each other, Kai? A few months? Some nice dinners and pretty words?" Maybe Oliver was right. Maybe workplace relationships are just too complicated, too messy. Maybe I was stupid to think we could ever work. Kai felt tears streaming down his face. "Don't do this. Please don't push me away. I love you. That's real, even if everything else is falling apart." For just a moment, something flickered in Asher's eyes. Pain, doubt, longing. But then it was gone, locked away behind walls that seemed thicker and stronger than before. "The board is demanding action. Half of them want to press criminal charges. I convinced them to just fire you instead." "Fire me?" The words felt unreal. "Asher, please, let me prove my innocence. Give me a chance to find out who really did this. I trusted you with everything." Asher's voice was quiet now, broken. "I let you see parts of me that I've never shown anyone else. And this is how you repay that trust? By selling my company's secrets to my worst enemy? I didn't do IT." Kai was shouting now, desperate. "I love you. I would never hurt you like this. Love isn't enough." Asher turned away, unable to look at Kai anymore. "Not when the evidence is this clear. Not when my company and everyone who works here is at risk. I have to protect them. I have to protect what my parents built, even if it means—" He stopped, his shoulders tense. "Even if it means destroying an innocent person?" Kai finished bitterly. "Even if it means throwing away what we have without even investigating properly? You're fired, effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building. You have 1 hour to clean out your desk." Asher's voice was mechanical now, like he was reading from a script. "If you attempt to contact me or enter this building again, we will press charges. Do you understand?" Kai stood there for a long moment, tears streaming down his face, looking at the man he loved who wouldn't even turn around to face him. "I understand. I understand that you're a coward, Asher. You're so afraid of being hurt again that you'd rather believe I betrayed you than risk trusting someone completely. You're choosing to be alone rather than fighting for what we have." Asher flinched like he'd been struck, but he didn't turn around. Didn't deny it. "When I prove my innocence," Kai said, his voice shaking with emotion. "Don't come looking for me. Don't apologize. Don't try to fix this, because you'll have shown me exactly who you are. And I don't want anything to do with someone who gives up on love so easily." He walked out, leaving Asher standing alone in his perfect office with his perfect view of the city, surrounded by everything he had gained and nothing he actually wanted. The walk back to his desk was the longest of Kai's life. Everyone stared at him as he passed, their expressions ranging from pity to suspicion to satisfaction at seeing someone powerful brought low. Leo was at his own desk, looking appropriately shocked and disappointed. His acting was flawless. "Kai, I can't believe this," Leo said, and he almost sounded sincere. "You were always so honest. How could you do something like this?" Kai looked at his friend, too devastated to even respond. He just started packing his few personal items into a box. A photo of him and his family, a coffee mug Oliver had given him for his birthday, a small plant that was barely surviving. That's when Oliver appeared, looking genuinely distressed. "Kai, what's happening? They're saying you stole company files, but that's impossible. You wouldn't do that." Kai's throat was so tight he could barely speak. "I didn't, but nobody believes me." Oliver's eyes filled with anger. "This is wrong. There has to be an explanation. Let me help you figure out what happened." Something in Kai's chest unclenched slightly. At least one person believed in him. "Thank you, Oliver. That means more than you know." They stepped outside the building after security escorted Kai out like a criminal. The afternoon sun was too bright, too cheerful for how dark everything felt. Kai stood on the sidewalk holding his box of belongings, his entire career and relationship destroyed in the span of a few hours. "I saw something," Oliver said quietly, looking around to make sure nobody was listening. "About 3 weeks ago, I was working late. I came back from the bathroom and saw someone at your desk, at your computer. It was dark and I was tired, so I didn't think much of it at the time. I assumed it was you, but now—" Kai's heart started beating faster. "Who was it? Did you see their face?" Oliver looked pained. "I'm not completely sure. It was just a glimpse, but I think, Kai, I think it might have been Leo." The world stopped. Leo. His best friend. The person he had trusted completely, had shared everything with. No, it couldn't be. But even as Kai's heart rejected the idea, his mind was remembering things. Leo's strange questions about company secrets, his increasing hostility, the way he had been acting so weird lately, nervous and aggressive at the same time. His perfectly timed appearance this morning, his perfect shock and disappointment. Why would Leo do that? Kai whispered, but he already knew the answer. Jealousy, resentment, maybe money problems that Kai didn't know about. People did terrible things when they were desperate. Oliver put a hand on Kai's shoulder. "I don't have proof. I just have what I saw that one night, and even that isn't clear enough to be sure. But if you want to clear your name, that's where I would start investigating." Kai looked back up at the Sterling Corporation building, at Asher's office on the top floor. Somewhere up there, the man he loved was convinced Kai had betrayed him, was probably hating himself for ever trusting someone, for ever letting his walls down. Pain and anger mixed together in Kai's chest, creating something new, something harder and sharper than anything he had felt before. He had lost his job, his reputation, and the love of his life because of a lie. Because someone had framed him and nobody had bothered to look deeper before condemning him. "Help me prove it," Kai said to Oliver, his voice steady now despite the tears still on his cheeks. "Help me find evidence that Leo did this. I want my name cleared, and I want him to face consequences for destroying my life." Oliver nodded firmly. "We'll figure this out together, I promise." As they walked away from the building, Kai made a silent vow. He would prove his innocence. He would expose Leo's betrayal. And he would make sure Asher understood exactly what he had thrown away by not having faith in the person who loved him. But he wouldn't do it for Asher. He would do it for himself. Because Kai Rivers deserved better than being treated like a criminal by someone who claimed to love him. He deserved justice, truth, and the chance to rebuild his life from the ashes of this betrayal. And when everything was said and done, when Leo was exposed and Asher came crawling back with apologies and regrets, Kai wasn't sure he would be there to accept them. Some things once broken couldn't be fixed. Some trust once destroyed couldn't be rebuilt. Kai was about to learn whether love was one of those things. The first week after being fired was the hardest week of Kai's life. He barely left his apartment, spending days in his pajamas staring at the wall and trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong so fast. He ignored calls from his parents, too ashamed to tell them he had lost his job. He ignored texts from old coworkers expressing shock and disappointment. He especially ignored the part of his heart that kept wanting to text Asher, to beg him one more time to believe in his innocence. The only person he did talk to was Oliver, who came over every evening after work with food and determination to help. They sat at Kai's small kitchen table, Oliver's laptop open between them, trying to figure out how to prove what they suspected about Leo. "The problem is that we need concrete evidence," Oliver explained, pushing his glasses up his nose in that nervous way he had. "Just saying I saw someone at your computer 3 weeks ago isn't enough. It could have been anyone. It was dark and I only saw them from behind. A good lawyer would tear that testimony apart in seconds." Kai buried his face in his hands. "So what do we do? How do we prove Leo was the one who accessed my computer and stole those files?" Oliver was quiet for a moment, thinking hard. "We need to catch him in the act, or we need to find proof of his motive. Why would Leo steal company secrets? It's usually about money, right? So maybe he has debts or financial problems we don't know about. How do we find out about his personal finances without breaking laws ourselves?" Kai asked tiredly. "We start by watching him, following him, see where he goes, who he meets with, what he does outside of work." Oliver looked apologetic. "I know it sounds extreme, but if we're right about this, we need to be smart about gathering evidence." So they became amateur detectives, spending their evenings following Leo around the city. It was tedious, uncomfortable work. They had to be careful not to be spotted, always staying far enough back while still keeping Leo in sight. For the first few days, nothing interesting happened. Leo went to work, came home, occasionally stopped at a grocery store or coffee shop. But on the 4th night of surveillance, something changed. Leo left his apartment at 10 p.m., looking nervous and checking over his shoulder constantly. He took a taxi to a rough part of town that Kai had never been to, where the buildings were run down and the streetlights were mostly broken. Kai and Oliver followed in Oliver's car, keeping their distance. They watched as Leo entered a seedy-looking bar called the Iron Cage. Through the grimy windows, they could see him meeting with 2 men who looked dangerous, all tattoos and hard expressions. "Take photos," Kai whispered urgently. "Document everything." Oliver pulled out his phone, angling it carefully to capture images through the window. They watched as Leo handed over a thick envelope to one of the men, who opened it and counted through what looked like a lot of cash. The transaction complete, Leo hurried out of the bar looking relieved and scared at the same time. "Gambling debts," Oliver said with certainty. "Those look like enforcers collecting payment." Over the next week, they built up a picture of Leo's secret life. He owed money to dangerous people. He was meeting regularly with someone who worked for Nexus Industries, Sterling Corporation's rival company. Every piece of the puzzle confirmed what they suspected, but still didn't provide the kind of proof that would definitively clear Kai's name. "We need to get Leo to confess," Kai finally said. "Or we need to find the evidence on his own devices. But how? We can't just break into his apartment and steal his computer." Oliver was quiet for a long moment, and then his expression changed. "What if we didn't have to break in? What if Leo invited us in? Why would he do that?" Kai asked skeptically. "Because I'm going to tell him I know what he did and that I have proof. I'm going to make him panic. And when people panic, they make mistakes." It was risky, but they were running out of options. The next evening, Oliver called Leo and asked to meet him at a coffee shop. Kai waited outside, hidden but able to hear everything through a phone connection that Oliver kept open in his pocket. "Thanks for meeting me," Oliver said, his voice steady despite his nervousness. "I wanted to talk to you about Kai." "What about Kai?" Leo's voice was guarded. "Look, I feel bad for him too, but the evidence was pretty clear. He stole those files and got caught." "That's interesting," Oliver said calmly. "Because I saw someone at Kai's computer about 3 weeks ago, late at night when almost everyone had gone home. And I'm pretty sure that someone was you." There was a long, tense silence. Kai held his breath, waiting. "You're crazy," Leo finally said, but his voice had an edge of panic to it. "Why would I frame my own friend? Money problems? Gambling debts? Payments from Nexus Industries?" Oliver listed them off like he was reading a grocery list. "Should I keep going?" "You have no proof of any of that." But Leo sounded scared now, not confident. Don't I? You'd be surprised what a determined person can find out. Oliver leaned forward. Here's what I think happened. You got in over your head with gambling. You owed dangerous people money you didn't have. Nexus Industries approached you, offered to pay you to steal secrets from Sterling Corporation. You used Kai's computer and login credentials to make it look like he was the thief, and you let your best friend take the fall for your crime. That's insane. Leo's voice was rising. You have no proof. You're making up stories. Am I? Then you won't mind if I take what I know to the police. Let them investigate properly. I'm sure they'll find nothing, right? Oliver's voice was hard in a way Kai had never heard before. Or maybe they'll find exactly what I think they'll find. Bank records showing payments from Nexus Industries, communications with their representatives, evidence on your personal devices of the files you stole. You can't do this. Leo shouted, and Kai heard the sound of a chair scraping back. You'll ruin my life? The way you ruined Kai's? Oliver shot back. He lost everything because of you. His job, his reputation, his relationship with Asher. And you just let it happen. You let him suffer and didn't say a word. There was a long silence, and then Kai heard something that made his heart race. Leo was crying, actually crying. I didn't want to hurt him, Leo sobbed. I didn't have a choice. They were going to kill me if I didn't pay them back. And Nexus offered so much money. Enough to clear all my debts and more. I saw an opportunity and I took it. I thought maybe Kai would just get a slap on the wrist, a warning. I didn't think they'd fire him. I didn't think it would destroy his whole life. But it did, Oliver said coldly. And now you need to make it right. You need to confess to what you did. Clear Kai's name. Face the consequences of your choices. I can't. Leo's voice was desperate. If I confess, I'll go to jail. The people I owe money to will find me. Nexus Industries will make sure I never work again. My life will be over. Your life should be over, Oliver said harshly. You betrayed your best friend. You're a coward and a criminal. The only question now is whether you confess voluntarily or whether I force your hand by going to the police with everything I know. Kai listened to his former best friend crying and making excuses and felt something inside him harden. This was the person he had trusted completely, the person he had shared his dreams and fears with. And Leo had thrown him away like garbage the moment it benefited him. The meeting ended with Leo stumbling out of the coffee shop, still crying and denying everything despite his obvious guilt. Oliver came out looking grim but satisfied. I recorded the whole conversation, he said, holding up his phone. Him admitting to taking the files, admitting to framing you, admitting to working with Nexus Industries. It's not a perfect confession because he was emotional and kept contradicting himself, but combined with the other evidence we've gathered, it should be enough. Kai felt a wave of relief so strong it almost knocked him over. We got him. We actually got him. Not yet, Oliver cautioned. We need to make sure this evidence gets to the right people, and we need to make sure Leo doesn't run or destroy evidence before we can act. They spent the next 2 days carefully planning their next move. Oliver had a friend who was a lawyer, someone trustworthy who could advise them on how to present their evidence properly. They gathered everything they had. Photos of Leo meeting with Nexus Industries representatives, bank records they had obtained through some creative but legal research, the recording of Leo's partial confession, and Oliver's testimony about seeing someone at Kai's computer. The lawyer reviewed everything and nodded slowly. This is good, really good. But we need more. We need something that directly connects Leo to the theft in a way that can't be disputed. Do you have access to any of his devices? No, Kai said, frustrated. We've been watching him, but we haven't been able to get his phone or computer. Then we need to make him bring the evidence to us. The lawyer leaned back in her chair thinking, what if we set up a sting operation, make Leo think he's meeting with his Nexus Industries contact for another payment, but actually he's walking into a trap? It took another week to arrange, but they managed it. Oliver used a burner phone to text Leo from a number claiming to be his Nexus contact, asking for one more meeting to exchange the final payment for additional stolen information. The meeting was set for a warehouse in the industrial district, a location that would be isolated enough for their purposes. Kai contacted the police with their lawyer's help, presenting all their evidence and explaining their plan. Initially, the officers were skeptical, but as they reviewed the recordings and photographs, their attitudes changed. They agreed to be present at the warehouse meeting, hidden and ready to move in when Leo incriminated himself. The night of the sting operation, Kai felt sick with nervousness. He was hiding in an unmarked police van with several officers, watching through a small window as Leo arrived at the warehouse. Leo looked terrible, thin and exhausted and scared. Part of Chi felt sorry for him. But a bigger part was still angry about everything that had been taken from him. A man stepped out of the shadows, someone they had hired to play the part of the Nexus Industries contact. "You have what we asked for?" the man said in a gruff voice. Leo pulled out a USB drive with shaking hands. "All the new client contracts Sterling Corporation signed this month, plus their upcoming merger plans. This is the last time, right? After this, we're done? You promised me enough money to disappear and start over somewhere else." "Sure, kid. After this, you're free to go." The fake contact took the USB drive and handed over an envelope that supposedly contained cash. That's when the police moved in, surrounding Leo from all sides. His face went white as he realized what had happened. He tried to run but was tackled and handcuffed within seconds. "Leo Martinez, you're under arrest for corporate espionage, theft of confidential information, and conspiracy to defraud Sterling Corporation," one of the officers announced, reading him his rights. Leo was crying again, struggling against the handcuffs. "No, this isn't fair. I was forced to do it. They threatened me." But nobody was listening to his excuses anymore. The evidence was overwhelming. The USB drive he had just handed over, his own words admitting to multiple thefts, the bank records showing payments from Nexus Industries. There was no way out for him now. Kai stepped out of the police van, and Leo saw him. For a moment, their eyes met across the warehouse floor. Leo's expression was a mixture of shame, fear, and something that might have been regret. "I'm sorry," Leo whispered. "I'm so sorry, Kai." But Kai turned away without responding. Sorry wasn't enough. Sorry didn't give him back the job he lost, the reputation that was destroyed, or the relationship with Asher that had shattered into pieces. The next day, the police contacted Sterling Corporation with the new evidence. They laid out everything that had happened, proving conclusively that Kai had been framed and Leo was the real thief. The USB drive Leo had tried to sell contained a hidden tracker that connected directly to Leo's personal computer, providing the final piece of evidence that he had been the one stealing files all along. Asher's assistant called Kai, asking him to come to the Sterling Corporation building. Kai's first instinct was to refuse. He didn't want to see Asher, didn't want to deal with apologies or explanations, but his lawyer advised him that meeting was necessary to fully clear his name and potentially discuss compensation for wrongful termination. So Kai went back to the building he had been escorted out of in shame just a few weeks earlier. This time, people looked at him differently. Word had spread about Leo's arrest and Kai's innocence. Some people smiled apologetically. Others looked ashamed that they had believed the lies so easily. Kai rode the elevator to the top floor, his heart pounding harder with each ascending number. He remembered the last time he had been in Asher's office, remembered the pain of watching the person he loved turn away from him, choose not to believe in him. When he walked in, Asher was standing by the windows looking out at the city, just like he had been that night. But now his shoulders were slumped, defeated in a way Kai had never seen before. "Close the door," Asher said quietly, not turning around. Kai closed it but stayed near the exit, keeping his distance. "Your assistant said you wanted to see me. I wanted to—" Asher stopped, his voice breaking. "I wanted to tell you how sorry I am. For everything. For not believing you. For throwing you out without investigating properly. For choosing my fear over my love for you." "Okay," Kai said flatly, "you're sorry. Is that all?" Asher finally turned around, and Kai was shocked by what he saw. Asher looked terrible. There were dark circles under his eyes. His normally perfect hair was messy, and his suit was wrinkled like he had slept in it. He looked like he hadn't been taking care of himself at all. "No, that's not all." Asher took a step forward, then stopped when he saw Ki tense up. "I want to explain. I want you to understand why I reacted the way I did. Not to excuse it, but just so you know. I don't owe you anything, Kai said coldly. Not my time, not my understanding, nothing. I know. Asher's voice was rough with emotion. But please, just 5 minutes. Then you can leave and never talk to me again if that's what you want. Kai considered walking out. He had every right to. But something in Asher's broken expression made him stay. 5 minutes. Asher sat down heavily in his chair, like standing was taking too much energy. When you were accused of stealing from the company, all I could think about was my parents. The week before they died, they discovered that someone they had trusted completely, their CFO, had been embezzling from the company for years. Millions of dollars stolen by someone they considered family. It nearly destroyed everything they had built. Kai listened silently as Asher continued. They confronted him, and he denied it just like you denied the accusations against you. He swore he was innocent, that someone had framed him. My parents wanted to believe him, but the evidence was overwhelming. They fired him and pressed charges. A week later, they were driving to meet with prosecutors when their car crashed. The investigators said it was brake failure, but there were always whispers that maybe it wasn't an accident, that maybe the CFO had connections, had arranged for them to be killed in revenge. Asher's hands were shaking as he spoke. So when I saw the evidence against you, when it looked exactly like what happened with our CFO, I panicked. I thought history was repeating itself. I thought I had been fooled again, had trusted someone who was just using me to get to the company. And I was so terrified of what might happen if I was wrong, so scared of losing everything, that I shut down completely. I went back to being the cold, untouchable CEO because that felt safer than being vulnerable. So you chose safety over me, Kai said, his voice hard despite the pain he heard in Asher's explanation. I did, and it was the worst mistake of my life. Asher looked up at Kai with red, exhausted eyes. I've spent every day since then hating myself for it. Knowing that I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me because I was too scared and damaged to fight for it. You told me I was a coward, and you were right. I am a coward. Kai felt tears pricking at his own eyes but refused to let them fall. Do you know what the worst part was? Not being fired. Not having everyone think I was a criminal. The worst part was looking at you and seeing that you didn't believe in me. That the person who was supposed to love me, who was supposed to know me better than anyone, thought I was capable of betraying him so completely. I know, Asher whispered, and I'll never forgive myself for that. Never. The 5 minutes were up. Kai could leave now, walk out of this office and never look back, but there was something he needed to say first, something that had been building inside him during all the weeks of hurt and anger and eventually healing. I've spent the last few weeks learning a lot about myself, Kai said. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought, that I can survive having my life fall apart and build it back up again. I learned that I deserve to be with someone who trusts me completely, who fights for me instead of giving up at the first sign of trouble. And I learned that love isn't just about the good times. It's about how people treat you when things get hard and scary. Asher nodded slowly, understanding what was coming. You failed that test, Kai continued. You let your trauma and fear control you instead of trusting in what we had together. And I understand why, I really do. Your explanation makes sense. But understanding doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't change the fact that when I needed you most, you weren't there. I know, Asher said again. What can I do? How can I make this right? You can't, Kai said simply. Some things can't be fixed, Asher. Some damage is permanent. That's just reality. He watched as Asher's face crumpled, as the last bit of hope died in his eyes. But Kai wasn't finished yet. However, he continued, and saw Asher look up with desperate attention. I believe people can change. I believe that we learn from our mistakes and become better versions of ourselves. The question is, have you changed? Or are you still the scared, broken person who pushed me away? Asher stood up slowly. I've been in therapy 3 times a week since you left. I've been working on understanding my trauma, on learning to trust people, on becoming someone who doesn't let fear control every decision. I've made changes in how I run the company too. I implemented new investigation procedures so nobody else gets falsely accused like you were. I've been trying to be more open with employees, To show them that I'm a person and not just a cold boss they need to fear. That's good, Kai said, and meant it. I'm glad you're working on yourself. Everyone deserves the chance to heal and grow. But it's not enough, Asher finished for him. I understand. I destroyed what we had, and there's no going back to how things were. Kai took a deep breath. No, we can't go back. But maybe, if you're willing to really put in the effort, we could start over. As two different people. Not the naive young employee and the damaged CEO who fell in love, but as Kai and Asher, two people who have both been through hell and come out changed on the other side. Asher's eyes widened with shock and hope. You mean, I mean that I'm willing to try again. Slowly. Very slowly. Starting from the beginning, like we just met. Coffee dates where we actually get to know each other properly. Honest conversations about our fears and traumas. Building trust from the ground up instead of assuming it's already there. Kai held up his hand when Asher started to move forward. But I need to be clear about something. If you hurt me again, if you let fear control you again instead of communicating with me, I'm done. No second chances, no explanations. I'll walk away and never look back. Do you understand? I understand, Asher said fervently. I swear to you, Kai, I'll do better. I'll be better. I'll go to therapy, work on my issues, learn to communicate instead of shutting down. I'll prove to you that I can be the partner you deserve. Don't promise me things, Kai said. Just show me. Through actions, not words. That's how we'll rebuild trust. Asher nodded, and for the first time in weeks, there was real hope in his expression. Not the desperate hope of someone drowning and grasping at straws, but the quiet, steady hope of someone willing to do the hard work necessary to become better. Can I at least give you a proper apology for your wrongful termination? Asher asked. You deserve back pay, compensation, and your job back if you want it. Though I'll understand if you'd rather work somewhere else. Kai considered this. I actually received a job offer from another company. Oliver works there now too. They offered me a promotion and better pay than I had here. I was planning to accept it. Something flickered across Asher's face that might have been jealousy or sadness, but he controlled it quickly. That's wonderful. You deserve recognition for your talents. Will you still accept the compensation for wrongful termination, though? It's the least we can do. Yes. I'll have my lawyer contact your legal department to work out the details. Kai moved toward the door, then stopped. And Asher? Thank you for explaining about your parents. It helps me understand, even if it doesn't excuse what happened. Thank you for listening, and for giving me another chance I absolutely don't deserve. Asher's voice was thick with emotion. I'll start small. Coffee next week if you're willing? Just as friends getting to know each other? Kai smiled slightly, the first real smile he had given Asher in weeks. Coffee sounds good. Text me to set up a time and place. As Kai left the building, he felt lighter than he had in weeks. The weight of anger and betrayal was still there. But it was lessening. He had his name cleared, Leo was facing justice for what he had done, and he had a new job opportunity waiting for him. Oliver was waiting outside, leaning against his car with a concerned expression. When he saw Kai, he straightened up anxiously. How did it go? Better than expected, Kai admitted. We're going to try again. Start over from the beginning and see if we can build something healthier this time. Oliver's expression was complicated, mixing happiness for his friend with something that looked like disappointment. That's great, Kai. I'm glad you're giving him another chance. Kai studied Oliver's face, seeing something there he had been too distracted to notice before. Oliver, do you have feelings for me? Oliver's face turned red, but he didn't deny it. I do. I have for a while now. But I also know that you love Asher, and I respect that. Your happiness is more important to me than my own feelings. Kai felt a surge of affection for this kind, selfless person who had stood by him when everyone else believed the worst. You're an amazing friend, Oliver. And I want you to know that if things with Asher don't work out, if we can't rebuild what we had, you're the kind of person I would be lucky to be with. But I'm not the person you want, Oliver said with a sad smile, and that's okay. I'll wait and I'll hope, but I won't pressure you or make you feel guilty. Just know that I'm here if you ever need me. They hugged, a long embrace between friends who had been through something difficult together and come out stronger on the other side. Over the next 6 months, Kai rebuilt his life piece by piece. He started his new job and excelled at it, proving to himself that his success at Sterling Corporation hadn't been because of his relationship with the CEO. He was talented and hard-working in his own right. He and Asher went on coffee dates every week, then started adding in dinners and movies. They talked about everything, including the hard topics they had avoided before. Asher told Kai about his nightmares and his therapy sessions, about learning to recognize when fear was controlling his decisions. Kai told Asher about his own struggles, about learning to trust again after being betrayed by his best friend and abandoned by his boyfriend. It wasn't always easy. There were times when old patterns tried to resurface, when Asher's instinct was to shut down and push people away, when Kai's instinct was to assume the worst and protect himself. But they had learned from their mistakes. They communicated. They went to couples counseling together. They worked on building something stronger than what they had before. Leo pleaded guilty to corporate espionage and was sentenced to 3 years in prison, with additional fines to repay the money he had stolen. Nexus Industries faced their own legal troubles, with several executives being charged with conspiracy to commit corporate espionage. Marcus Blackwell, the CEO who had orchestrated the whole scheme, was forced to resign in disgrace. Kai received a formal apology from Sterling Corporation along with substantial compensation for his wrongful termination. He didn't need the money anymore since his new job paid well, so he donated most of it to organizations that helped people who had been falsely accused of crimes. 8 months after that terrible day when Kai's world fell apart, he and Asher were on the roof of the Sterling Corporation building again. It was where they had first kissed, where they had first admitted their feelings for each other. But now they were different people, shaped by pain and betrayal and the hard work of healing. "I love you," Asher said, the words easier now than they had been that first time. "And I trust you completely. You've proven over and over that you're someone who deserves trust, and I'm grateful every day that you gave me the chance to prove myself to you too." "I love you too," Kai replied, meaning it with his whole heart. Not the person you were before, but the person you've become. Someone who's willing to be vulnerable, to communicate, to fight for what matters instead of running away when things get scary. They kissed under the stars, but this time it felt different. Not like the desperate hidden kiss of two people afraid of being discovered. This kiss was confident and open, a declaration that they had nothing to hide. They had been broken and had healed stronger in the broken places. "I have something to ask you," Asher said nervously, pulling back slightly, "and you can absolutely say no if you're not ready." "What is it?" Asher took a deep breath. "Move in with me. Not because it's convenient or because we're trying to recapture what we had before, but because I want to build a life with you. A real partnership between equals who trust and support each other." Kai thought about it. About Oliver, who had quietly stepped back to give Kai space to figure out his feelings. About his parents, who had been so supportive when he finally told them everything that had happened. About the life he had built for himself, independent and strong. And about Asher, who had done the hard work of becoming someone worthy of Kai's trust. "Yes," Kai said finally, smiling at the joy that flooded Asher's face. "But we're going to do this right. Open communication about everything. No secrets, no hiding. If something bothers us, we talk about it immediately instead of letting it fester. Deal?" Asher agreed, pulling Kai close again. "I promise you, Kai Rivers, I will spend every day for the rest of my life making sure you know you made the right choice trusting me again." And he did. Their relationship wasn't perfect, because no relationship is. But it was real and honest and built on a foundation of hard-won trust. They learned that love wasn't just about the butterflies and romance. It was about choosing each other every day, even when things were difficult. It was about communication and vulnerability and the courage to be honest even when the truth was hard. Kai eventually reconciled with his feelings about Leo. He couldn't forgive what Leo had done, but he could understand that people make terrible choices when they're desperate and scared. He visited Leo once in prison not to offer forgiveness but to find closure. To look his former friend in the eye and let go of the anger that had been weighing him down. Oliver found his own happiness eventually, meeting someone at his new company who appreciated his kindness and loyalty. He remained friends with Kai, though they saw each other less frequently as they both moved forward with their lives. But Kai never forgot what Oliver had done for him, how he had stood by him when everyone else believed the lies. And Asher Sterling, the cold CEO who everyone thought would never let anyone close, became known around the office for his fairness and his willingness to listen to his employees. He was still professional and serious at work, but people no longer feared him. They respected him, because he had learned that being strong didn't mean being alone, and being a leader didn't mean never showing vulnerability. Years later, when Kai and Asher got married in a quiet ceremony with just close friends and family, Oliver was there as Kai's best man. He gave a speech that made everyone laugh and cry, talking about how proud he was of both of them for doing the hard work necessary to build something beautiful out of the ashes of betrayal and pain. "Love isn't finding a perfect person," Oliver said, raising his glass. "It's finding someone whose imperfections match your own, and then both of you working every day to become better together than you ever could be apart." To Kai and Asher, who proved that even broken things can be made whole again if you're willing to do the work. As Kai looked around the room at the people who had supported him through the darkest time of his life, and then at Asher standing beside him looking at him like he was the most precious thing in the world, he thought about how far they had come. From a joke that accidentally revealed hidden feelings, through betrayal and pain and the hard work of healing, to this moment of celebration and hope. He thought about how easy it would have been to let bitterness and hurt destroy him completely. How he could have given up on love, on trust, on believing that people could change. But he hadn't. He had chosen to fight for himself, to prove his innocence, and then to take the biggest risk of all by giving Asher another chance. And looking back, he wouldn't change any of it, because the pain had made him stronger. The betrayal had taught him to value real friendship and trust. And the work of rebuilding had created something more solid and lasting than anything they could have had if everything had been easy. Sometimes the best love stories aren't the ones that start perfectly and stay perfect. They're the ones that break and get put back together, leaving visible scars but also creating something stronger than before. Like bones that heal stronger where they were broken, like pottery repaired with gold making the cracks part of the beauty. Kai and Asher's story was messy and painful and far from perfect, but it was real. And in the end, that was all that mattered. If you enjoyed this story, please share it with someone who loves BL romance. Have you ever had to rebuild trust after a betrayal? Or learned that people can change if they're willing to do the work? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Remember, every ending is also a new beginning. And sometimes the best relationships are the ones that survive being broken. Don't forget to subscribe for more emotional BL romance stories that explore the complex journey of love, trust, and healing.